In A New Hope, we witnessed one of the most iconic confrontations in Star Wars, Obi-Wan versus Darth Vader on the Death Star. Two warriors, once master and apprentice, now enemies locked in a duel that had been 19 years in the making. Well, technically the Kenobi show had them fight in between Mustafar and the Death Star, but anyway, it had still been several years since the last time they had fought. Instead of fighting to the end, something unexpected happens. Obi-Wan raises his lightsaber, closes his eyes, and allows Vader to strike him down. His body vanishes, leaving only empty robes on the floor. So why did Obi-Wan do this? Why would one of the most skilled Jedi Masters in history simply allow himself to be killed? Was it an act of surrender, or was there something deeper at play? Today, we'll answer this question by walking through Obi-Wan's own perspective, taken from the Canon short story Time of Death, that reveals exactly what was going through his mind during those final moments. The corridor of the Death Star stretched on like the interior of some massive mechanical beast, a cold, oppressive space where even the hum of machinery seemed to echo with menace. The smell of scorched metal lingered faintly in the air, and the flickering lights overhead cast long shadows on the steel walls. At the far end stood Darth Vader, motionless and waiting. The crimson light of his lightsaber pulsed in his grasp, washing the metal around him in blood-red tones. His breathing was slow and mechanical, the deep rasp of his respirator rising and falling with a dreadful rhythm. He did not move, did not speak, and yet his presence filled the space like a crushing weight. Obi-Wan Kenobi stepped forward to meet him, his own lightsaber igniting with a sharp hiss. The cool blue glow of the blade stood in stark contrast to Vader's crimson weapon. This was not the young general of the Clone Wars, nor the man who had dueled General Grievous. This was an older Obi-Wan, lined with years, hardened by regret, his every step measured. His shoulders carried the invisible weight of 19 years of isolation and loss. He knew the stakes here, but even before their blades met, he understood something vital. This was not a duel he intended to win in the traditional sense. Vader's silence spoke volumes. The once impetuous Anakin Skywalker had been transformed into a cold, calculating predator. Obi-Wan could sense his rage, vast and powerful, but it was not wild. It was controlled, refined by years under the Emperor's hand. In the place of Anakin's fiery recklessness stood something colder, more deliberate. Obi-Wan too was far from the man he had been. Age had slowed his limbs, and time had chipped away at the effortless speed and precision that had once made him one of the greatest duelists in the Jedi Order. But it was not just his body that was heavier, it was his spirit. He carried with him the memory of Qui-Gon's death on Naboo, of Padme's final breath, of the fire and betrayal on Mustafar. Each of these moments clung to him like chains. When their blades finally met, the sound rang through the corridor, sharp and electric. It was more than a physical clash. It was the collision of two lifetimes bound together by loyalty, betrayal, and grief. Obi-Wan could feel the pull of the past in every movement, as if ghosts were fighting beside him. The duel became a blur of motion, but with every impact, Obi-Wan's mind began to fracture. The walls of the Death Star dissolved around him, replaced by the familiar confines of his hut on Tatooine. In this vision, his hands were steady and strong, his body untouched by the aches of age. He saw the hut as it had been in his early years of exile, bare, almost empty, with nothing but the essentials. The scenes shifted in rapid succession. He was cradling the newborn Luke Skywalker, the child's wails echoing in his ears as Padme Amidala lay dying. Then Qui-Gon Jinn's body collapsed to the hangar floor on Naboo. Maul's funeral pyre burned beneath the twin suns. And finally, Anakin's face on Mustafar, eyes burning yellow with hatred as the flames consumed everything they had once been. Each vision reminded him not just of what he had endured, but why he was here now. The duel was not just about Vader, it was about Luke. One memory surfaced with painful clarity. He was astride his Eobi, riding hard across the salt flats. In the distance, smoke curled up from the Lars homestead. Bandits had come, and their attack was swift and merciless. Obi-Wan had fought with precision and skill, his lightsaber cutting down the marauders while Owen Lars fired from cover. Young Luke was there too, still a child but already brave and bold. In a movement of pure courage, Luke had thrown a toy starfighter to distract a massive Gamorrean, giving Obi-Wan the opening to strike him down. The battle ended, but any relief was short-lived. Owen's face was dark with anger. He struck Obi-Wan, knocking him to the ground, and ordered him to leave. He made it clear that Luke would never know the truth about his father and would never be trained as a Jedi. It was more than anger. Owen feared the look in Luke's eyes, the same defiance they had once seen in Anakin. That day, Obi-Wan lost more than a fight. He lost the chance to guide Luke when it mattered most. The memory faded and the duel aboard the Death Star returned. Yet now Obi-Wan's focus shifted completely. In the midst of the chaos, he could sense Luke's presence nearby. He could picture the boy in the hangar, frozen between instinct and inexperience. He could already imagine the moment that Luke would break from cover and rush toward him. If that happened, the outcome was certain. Vader would sense him, the stormtroopers would fire, and Luke would die before his journey could even begin. And if Luke fell here, everything, every year of exile, every sacrifice would be for nothing. This knowledge pressed on Obi-Wan more heavily than any physical strain. The fight ceased to be about Vader at all. It became about keeping Luke alive. Obi-Wan quickly assessed the reality of his situation. He was older, slower, and fighting an opponent whose cybernetic strength made him relentless. Even if he could outmatch Vader in skill, the battle would draw attention, chaos, and inevitably Luke's involvement. There was no victory to be found here, not in the conventional sense. The very act of continuing the fight was a risk to Luke's life. It was in this moment between strikes that he heard it, Qui-Gon's voice, calm and certain, saying, "Go to him." Obi-Wan understood instantly. This battle was not meant to be won. His role was not to strike down Vader, it was to protect Luke, even at the cost of his own life in the physical world. He spoke the words clearly, without fear. "If you strike me down, I shall become more powerful than you can possibly imagine." To Vader, it might have sounded like arrogance, but Obi-Wan knew the truth. It was a promise. Through his years of exile, he had learned from Yoda and Qui-Gon the secret of becoming one with the Force, retaining his identity beyond death. In life, his reach was limited by age, by distance, by the physical constraints of his body. But in death, he would be limitless. He could remain by Luke's side, guiding him no matter where he was in the galaxy. This was not surrender, it was transformation. It was choosing the form of victory that mattered most. Obi-Wan's choice was made. He locked eyes with Vader, or rather with the lifeless mask that hid what remained of Anakin, and straightened his back. He raised his blade into a vertical guard, not in defense, but in readiness for the final blow. In that last heartbeat, Obi-Wan's mind filled with the image of Luke as a small child, sitting cross-legged in the sand, his hands guiding a wooden starship through the air. He heard the boy's laughter, saw the unbroken hope in his eyes. Vader struck and Obi-Wan was gone. His robes fell empty to the floor. The man himself vanished into the Force. From within Luke's mind came the voice, urgent, familiar, and impossible to ignore. "Run, Luke, run!" Obi-Wan's decision was never about the satisfaction of defeating Vader. It was about Luke. It was about clearing the path for him to escape, ensuring that the galaxy's last hope was not extinguished in the hangar of the Death Star. By allowing himself to fall, Obi-Wan removed himself as a target, drew all eyes to Vader's strike, and gave Luke the time he needed to flee. And in doing so, he ensured that his own presence would not fade, but would remain. guiding Luke in ways a living body never could. Many fans might think that Vader had won, but in truth, it was actually the opposite. In that instant, Obi-Wan's sacrifice became the foundation of Luke Skywalker's journey. From the shadows of the Force, he would be there on Hoth, in the swamps of Dagobah, and in the moments when Luke faced Vader again. He would be a voice of wisdom, a constant presence, a guardian beyond life itself. So why did Obi-Wan let Vader kill him? So that Luke Skywalker could live. And in that moment, the Jedi were reborn. Thank you guys so much for watching this video. I hope that you enjoyed it. I hope you liked this story. I definitely recommend going and reading the story itself. It's a short story featured in the first From a Certain Point of View book. If you have not read those books, they are amazing. They made one for each of the original trilogy films. So there's Star Wars From a Certain Point of View, Empire Strikes Back From a Certain Point of View, and Return of the Jedi From a Certain Point of View. And they're all just short stories that basically tell us a bunch of stuff that happened off screen during the movies, and they fill in gaps and have great details of lore and things like that and explain things, and they're awesome. So this one is called Time of Death, and it's in the first book. So definitely recommend checking it out. But if you did enjoy this video, make sure to like and subscribe, and as always, may the Force be with you.